This session will discuss important corporate and investment learnings from taking ambitious climate actions, corporates that are managing obstacles and managing new challenges which are arising. We will do this in a collaborative approach. Even though you saw Volvo cars and our beautiful products here, I have the honor to have three corporates on stage. So welcome Jonas, Kristina and Sara. Welcome, and I'm so happy to be able to moderate this session and be in the hometown of both our companies. And Sara, you're based in Stockholm, still super welcome here. Jonas, first, you're head of climate actions at Volvo Cars. Can you shortly describe how Volvo Cars views upon taking climate actions, and can you also share the biggest challenges related to the sustainability targets?
Absolutely. Very happy to be here. And I think the movie we just looked at, it's a few years old, but I think it's a good starting point because Volvo Cars have for many years and sort of decades talked about safety being the core value of what we do. And of course we still say that, but the past 5-ish years we've said no, we need to go beyond that. So I represent the climate area and head up our climate strategy and implementation. And electrification is definitely not enough, but it's a very key step to decarbonize mobility. So what we are doing right now is, of course, to go electric. That's a given to us, and we're trying to do that as fast as possible. So by 2030, we are planning to have only full electric cars globally. Of course, we need to charge them with as high share of renewable electricity as possible globally, and that's a challenge in itself. But a big challenge for us as well is the materials going into the cars. We are right now planning for the cars to be launched to the market in 2028, 2029, and the decisions we take right now will influence the emissions we will have those years. So I'm stressed about a recently announced climate target for 2030, talking about a 75% reduction versus 2018. That's a really big stress for us, and I think that's very interesting to talk about here, which I want to come back to. This is an enormous challenge because we need to reduce not only going electric, we need to reduce emissions from the complete value chain of everything we're doing. That's the steel making, aluminum, plastic, electronics, and everything else that going into the car, beyond the manufacturing, offices, etc. And this is, well, something that is a big call to action to many.
Kristina, so happy to have you here. And you're from the other Volvo, which are producing normally larger heavy-duty trucks and buses, etc. But you're heading up, you're representing a new business area. Why is Volvo Group looking into energy, and what do you see in front of you in terms of challenges there?
Thank you, Ann-Sofie, and I will also build a little bit, Jonas, on what you alluded to. So the Volvo Group has, the highest ambition towards the SBTi. And we are aiming to net zero by 2040 and rolling population 2050. And Volvo Energy is the newest business areas in the Volvo Group, heading up two main areas to accelerate electrification and build a sustainability together with the group. And this is really a combination of circular model, so the circularity for the batteries, taking the complete circular life cycle, but also the charging and infrastructure solutions, and that goes for both hydrogen refueling and charging. And I would say that all in all, no one can do this alone. That's the main perspective. That's the main thing that we need to think about, is that it takes a whole ecosystem. The whole value chain needs to tact to do this. So if you are to accelerate electrification, it's not enough to have the products, and it's not enough to have circularity in the products either, to be honest. You need everything to tact. You need the municipalities, you need the incentives, you need the green energy coming through there, you need the network capabilities, So I would say that we in the Volvo Group are purpose-driven. I'm purpose-driven. And Volvo Energy is taking the opportunity to combine the start-up mentality, pragmatic approach, together with the group's muscles and industrialization capabilities to make sure that we avoid the hen and the egg situation and that we really accelerate this together.
Sounds super interesting. Looking forward to learn more about that. Sara, welcome. You're representing the investment, and you're investing in early climate. What do you see? What are the biggest opportunities for startups in climate tech, and how does InnoEnergy support them?
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here. And I can only tap into what Kristina just said. It takes an entire ecosystem to solve this. And obviously in InnoEnergy we see potential across the entire spectra of the energy field. I thought it was a bit more niched when I first joined, but I realized it spans across, basically everything. And with that, the big challenge ahead also comes with many different kind of solutions, and they have to all plug into each other and collaborate in order to function. And InnoEnergy is a little bit of an odd beast in this ecosystem. So we're not a traditional VC, but was funded by an initiative from the EIT back in 2010. So we've been around for 14 years, and we are one of the world's most active early-stage climate tech investors, and have a portfolio which is very large, about 200 companies across Europe. And our goal is very simple. It's to sustain an energy future for Europe and make sure that everything is produced to the largest extent possible here in the EU. And we actually raised our own private placement this summer. But more importantly than just the capital is the strategic ecosystem that our shareholders mean for us. So we have some investors from the leading universities across Europe, industrial and electric companies such as Schneider, Renault, Volkswagen, Siemens, among others, that also provide support to our startups. And one final thing that I think is worth mentioning, and what makes InnoEnergy different from many other sort of VCs or investors out there, is that we are also overseeing 3 different value chains with close collaboration with the European Commission. And one of them is solar PVs, another is hydrogen, and the last one is energy storage and smart grid. So where we see a gap in that value chain, we tend to act on it, and not just through funding, but through matchmaking across that value chain, and also through policy influencing in Brussels.
Jonas, I know that you are interested a lot in value chain. Do you have any immediate reaction to what Sara just mentioned that they are doing in InnoEnergy?
I think you touched upon, for example, energy storage. I think there are very many connection points between industries that we previously haven't really talked about. That is, for example, energy storage. Well, we see in our cars that we can use the car for something more than only, transporting people in a few hours a day. The recently announced EX90 will have the capability of bidirectional charging, because we of course see this as an opportunity as well. We should use the battery for something more, otherwise it will just be a waste of resources. And I think those connection points are very interesting, and it's also calls for the need of collaboration and sharing a lot more. Well, usually companies don't know about the cars we are to launch, before we launch them. So therefore it might be that others are also taking mitigating actions that are not taking into consideration, a fleet of bidirectional charging capable cars, or that we don't know what someone else is doing. So therefore we might not be optimized in this sort of big game. And I think that's an interesting, it's call for companies like you to collaborate more, and I think companies like us are probably not good enough yet, because we usually don't work like that.
Good. Kristina, I know that you're also looking into both hydrogen and storages and infrastructure in general. Any other reflections in Europe or in Sweden around this?
But I mean, the battery energy storage systems has many different applications. And I would say that one part is, of course, the vehicle itself. But in the commercial vehicle applications, when the batteries doesn't perform in such a high-performing environment, you can still use them for many years. And this is part of the circular model, because we need to find new ways of using these different components. And it goes for recycling and remanufacturing, but also for these kind of battery energy storage systems. And that will be an important stabilizer for the grid going forward as well. And also for power shortages and other things we will see. So I can just, second both Sara and Jonas that this is super important and something that is really giving a whole new opportunities for us.
So my take, to truly reduce the negative impact from mobility in line with science, the complete value chain has to act, right? And need to take bold actions as well. So no company, no investor can do it by itself. So I think we're here really to talk about collaboration and how we get together. But I'm curious to get your insights, some of your insights. What are the different pieces of the puzzle that need to make it happen now? Who wants to start?
Well, I can start and let's build on it.
Yes.
I would say that one of the most important parts is, of course, to make sure that we have the network capacity in our grid and the green electricity coming through. And here, just to take a simple example, if you take one commercial vehicle heavy duty, in a few years you will have 1 megawatt. If you take thousands vehicles charging, then you will have a nuclear plant.
Wow.
That's the amount of energy. And if you then take the European rolling population of approximately 350,000 vehicles, and you have a rolling fleet towards 2050, we can do the math. It's a lot of energy that will be needed. And we need to make sure that that energy reaches, because even if we can have the products, and even if the products reaches circularity, we need to be able to have affordable way to scale it for each customer. So I would say that without that, it will not fly.
Good. So energy availability and infrastructure.
And green energy availability.
For sure. Yeah, good. What else is needed, Jonas?
I can just build on that, because firstly, of course, energy is key in all areas. I think there is a too big debate of what type of energy should there be. We need all energy, and as clean as possible, but in the end of the day, energy will be a really, really big driver for this transition. Secondly, I touched upon that in my opening remark, that we see a very big need in transitioning some key materials that we will just be stuck with otherwise. Well, in public media in Sweden last week, there was a sort of TV show laughing about the green transition in North, talking about, the waste of resources happening in some of these transitions. And I think that's just mind-blowingly wrong, to be honest. Of course, that's my view. But in the end of the day, we will never be able to decarbonize enough if we don't decarbonize steel making and primary steel making. Of course, we should also go as recycled as possible, but that will never be enough as well. And it's not either or. We need a lot of new decarbonized steel, but we also need new energy. We cannot skip steel and only save the energy for something else, because then we're stuck with steel. So this is an interesting debate that is happening, because, as I said, we are putting the orders to the market right now of this steel that is not yet there, because we see that in 4 or 5 years from now, we will have a car that needs this steel if we are to meet our targets. The same with aluminum. Both AB Volvo and us, we are very active in trying to put so-called near zero emission aluminum to the market. And this is one of those breakthrough technologies that it's on a research state. It's very, very early. But we see that unless that is available to the market somewhere around 2030, we will miss the targets we have promised proudly externally. So we need to show, many players that we have an enormous demand. We will put money behind this. We need it by that time frame. So please ensure there is supply enough. And that's not only supply in one part of the world. This is a global problem. We are having global manufacturing, and we cannot ship material all over the world. We need a global supply. And I think companies need to be much more vocal about, the need and the increased early demand.
Yeah, good. Sara?
Speaking of need, and that's also something that we have identified as the sort of the weakest link in the value chain being raw materials for batteries. And it's something that today is not mined in a sustainable way, and something that we really want to reshore back to Europe to a large extent. And there has actually been some positive sort of initiatives coming from EU on this topic in the Critical Raw Materials Act. And InnoEnergy has been part of giving input to how it should be shaped. So now the result is it's actually very ambitious goals that are set for the percentage that should be produced domestically. When it comes to 3 different areas, it's both for recycling, processing, and mining. So across all the raw materials chain, so to say. And the purpose being basically that we need to make sure that it's also sustainable. And if it's produced in China, for example, we might not have that transparency to see how it's actually produced and what are the job opportunities that are lost in Europe, for example. It's quite big, so it's really important to sort of build the new industry 2.0, and the politicians are really, like, they're not going to solve this, but they're going to be the ones that lay the foundation and make the right conditions for the entrepreneurs so that their businesses can thrive in this space. And from InnoEnergy, I've actually also had an initiative now raising a new fund, which is a target of 500 million euro, simply for critical raw materials. So that's our sort of contribution to this space, and we hope to stimulate this space.
Good. If I can just add one more thing, is obviously capital. I heard the previous panel that we're talking about, like, capital in sustainable solutions and materials, etc. That is really needed. When me and my team is out scouting really what is happening long term and trying to find the new technologies, we obviously see that there are a lot of startups and other corporations that are looking into new innovative ideas. However, in order to scale, there is a limitation right now in the market we see. And if I could wish for something, it's really to get investors to understand that sustainability is the new profitability. If you don't invest there, there is no future. So if there is one thing that I really want to also have a mindset change of globally, not only in Europe, not only in America, but globally, is really profitability and sustainability really goes together in the future. Right now, it's a lot of money that needs to go into the system, right? But it's really required. Is there any other piece? Yes, Jonas.
Can I build on what you said?
Yes.
Because you touched upon something that I think is important. Usually, we talk about the sort of necessity of, well, sort of going net zero globally, and we talk about it on a very high on a very high level. And then sometimes the discussion comes up, well, it's rather hard, it's costly, and we talk a lot about the cost of inaction, the cost of action. That can we really afford to have all these future products? An electric car is somewhat more expensive than internal combustion today. Can we really do this, etc., etc.? But to me, we're very often missing the cost of inaction, and it's not necessarily legislation, because of course legislation is coming a lot, and that will be very, very tough for companies like us to meet, why we're pushing hard to do this. But also the whole change of what is the alternative cost of doing it. We see that the alternatives, well, if we talk fossil-based steel again, the cost of that will increase due to all of this. So it's not like, well, green steel will necessarily be more expensive than fossil-based steel due to CBAM and other stuff, for example. The whole landscape will change. The whole logic of the EBIT calculation on companies like us will change a lot. And I think we too often miss that topic and see the status as it is today as what will happen or what will stay in the coming years. And just final point, you talked about profitability. Well, companies like us, we're spending billions and billions right now to try to get out of this, because we see this is enormously challenging. So the business opportunity for, well, startups and venture capitals here, that shouldn't be in fully autonomous futures where everything is flying and something fantastic long term. Well, we see that the need of unicorns, that's in, well, the hard stuff that you usually don't talk about. And I think that's a missing point here.
Maybe yes, Jonas, to build on that, when you're into the green steel and the green steel production, I would say that here we have a very good example over the industry borders with the Ovako steel industry actually being able to go towards the green transition, but also doing so we can get the hydrogen to a better cost as the rest product from that. So I think we have opportunities here, and I would like to build on that, because as startups coming up with these different opportunities, how you can build this ecosystem, how you can find these things and still aim towards being, because we are not driven by legislations, we are driven by the purpose. So I agree, we cannot wait.
Good. One more thing about talents and into the new economy. Do you have any reflections or insight? What is required in Gothenburg, in Sweden, to make sure that we have the right talents, to make sure that this can also happen on a local scale? I know this is a spontaneous question, so maybe you did not have the perfect answer, which is fine. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think talent is so important as well.
But I mean, I love that you're putting us on the spot. Thank you for that, Ann-Sofie. So I mean, people are and will always be the most important part of the story, because strategies everyone can have. You can have incentives, you can have plans, and you can have different things. But the people, and when we come together, and this is really when you combine the assets from different startups, from different companies, and when we join together to create ideas, the magic is happening. Because it's when we all go from individual success to collective significance. That's when it matters. So sitting on each and every idea. So this is also, I mean, coming together in the partnership approach. But end of the day, it is us and it's the people who will do it. So talents is actually not a unique talent that is needed, or a unique talent from one of the areas. We will need all hands on deck. So that was a spontaneous answer to that question.
Yeah, I can only agree. Sort of sustainability is not a sustainability problem, it's the corporate problem. So therefore, yeah, we need more of everything. Of course, we need to digitalize, as we are already trying to do, etc. But it's not that we only need sustainability experts.
Yeah, I mean, businesses can't execute their own plans unless they have people to do it. And we need both, you know, white collar and blue collar of all kinds, and InnoEnergy is driving 7 different master programs together with some of universities here in Europe, but it's not enough. It's not even close to what the need is and what the projected need is. So I have a sort of big heart for this topic, as I used to work before in a coding boot camp. It was an initiative to get more software developers into the tech ecosystem. And I see that similar initiatives are needed even in the energy space. So, you know, the universities, they have a good solid base to stand on when it comes to the master programs, but then you also need more tailored, customized solutions that are, you know, practical and in line with what the customers and the companies really need.
Good, thank you. So we have found a different kind of pieces that we really need to make sure to get this transition really with result, not only with words, because then with results we can really change, right? So in the audience here we have investors, we have startup companies, we have corporations, we have probably some regulators, media, etc. What do you see as the most important contributions from the audience to speed up for corporations or for investors like us? So think about the audience and what they can contribute with.
But Ann-Sofie, I think you were into something, because in the audience here we have actually representatives from all of the different parts of the ecosystem and the value chain. So I think partnership is the new leadership, and that's not M&As and just only investments. It's actually finding a new way to work together, to put the purpose driven on top, because then we need to believe in this, and everything cannot be on a business case approach. And this is why I'm back again to say that we need to work together, because it needs to tact simultaneously, otherwise this will not fly. So I would say that And by the way, it's new, it's immature, and we don't know what will work, so we need to learn. So that means we need to fail, and we need to try new things. And we will not know before what will work. So I would say that the essence of actually believing in the different ideas for scale, because that's what's needed as well. So to be able to have ideas that can scale together. And incentives, of course, permits, and we can go, the list can be so long, but acting and not waiting and trying to form these across the I would say value chain as we were into.
But Kristina, I have to ask you, I mean, you're working for a large corporation, I as well, and often I get to hear, oh, but you're so slow and you don't want to allow others getting into the network and you have complicated contracts, etc. Do we dare to work in this collaborative approach that you're describing? Do you have examples?
I mean, definitely we do, and we can give many examples of that. But actually, if you think about it from a charging and infrastructure perspective, in Sweden, we will build the first nationwide commercial vehicle network in the world, to my knowledge, because we have done that across the borders with OKQ, with Energimyndigheten, with Volvo Group, and with a lot of other energy stakeholders. So we dare, and we do it. We do it every day, and we do this in different approaches. So I would say that maybe it's not seen, and maybe it's not known, but we are changing, because there is no other way to do it. There is no option to wait. So I would say yes, we are. Can we be better? Of course, right? So we can always be better.
And I think one of the things that we probably should promote even more is to talk about these changes and the transitions that the larger corporations are doing to make sure that it's actually understood and well known, so people don't give up.
But it's a good point, because of course giving up is not an option either, no. By the way. However, I would say that sometimes it can be difficult to come in and to get in contact and so on and so forth. But the pure idea of Volvo Energy as such is actually to combine the start-up mentality with the big corporation. So here we have an incubator also for the startups that is here today.
But let me build on that, because I cannot, of course, talk about Volvo Energy, and I think what you're doing is good. So therefore, what I'm saying is more on generic. But I think companies like us are definitely not good enough here. I have a background in startups previously, and sort of it was the last company in the world that we wanted to work with, the big corps, because it's just too slow. The procurement processes are enormously complicated, and the cost cutting in it's not worth going in there, because the cost of failing is just too high. So I think there is a need there that companies like us likely need to tackle more than what we have succeeded with so far. There is a need of the partnership approach. You talked about Ovako. I think that's a great example here, because connecting many different industries. We usually talk about mobility industry, and we might talk about some of our suppliers, but we seldom even chat with the companies in, I'm not sure, sort of construction or something a bit further away. And of course there are connection points here that we should utilize.
Exactly.
And I think there is a need of sort of innovation in the business development here. I think the logic of how we usually buy stuff and how we usually collaborate is not really prepared for this yet. Why we will probably just look at the business as we usually do. We sort of do an RFQ, get a response, look at the material or whatever we try to buy, and then sort of try to set up this business. But that's not necessarily how we want it to be done. And if we talk about these future materials and solutions that we are very actively looking into, then I think there is a need of sort of across the value chain, all of us need to look at, well, what is the best setup here? Because everyone is usually saying and trying to push that cost to someone else. And as a big corp, we are rather good at pushing that cost to someone else, which is not necessarily the right way of doing it. The customer, of course, the customer needs to take it on somewhat, but we need to share that cost and share that risk and jointly try to work on de-risking it. And I think that's something we need to work with sort of the capital market more on, sort of how can we jointly de-risk this? Because, well, companies like you also have targets on net zero. So you want us to do what we claim to do, and sort of this is a joint problem, and we need to sort of collaborate across the industries much more.
But it's funny that you're mentioning that word, because de-risk is actually one of the key words that we use at InnoEnergy for our approach. De-risk and accelerate. So it's so important for these startups that are capex heavy, typically hardware, and they need to secure their supply chain for one, and also off-takers already before they have started to build their product. So it's a completely different approach than, for myself, I have a background in software, for example. Then you sort of build and then you launch, and then you can iterate. But here it's a completely different approach that requires a collaborative mindset from start. So to give one example, we have been part of launching a company called Vercor in Frankrike, and it's a gigafactory, so similar to Northvolt, but in France. We were instrumental in setting it up and making sure they have off-take agreements with Renault, for example, and Schneider as well, and securing the site, etc., before we actually, start. So that's part of it, but then also making sure that they have a diverse funding base, not just equity, but also loans from EIB. 1/3 of their funding round was actually grants as well. So it's a completely different mindset when it comes to how you fundraise and how you build your company. But in a way, it's also similar to software, because you take a more agile approach in that sense that you are working together with your end customer to build a product that they are then buying. So that's my key learning from working at InnoEnergy so far.
And building on that, I mean, we also need to, as it's new, as it's unknown, as we were into, we need to prepare that all ideas will not fly. So I mean, it's also important to fail fast, learn and do it again, but allow that to happen, because the best ideas might not be the ones that we see on the paper. So I really acknowledge this de-risking example as well.
Sara, is that anything that you're coaching startups with? Really look into de-risking and to think about it very early?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we support the startups in a number of ways. We're very active, so each investment and asset manager have a portfolio that they are coaching from these different aspects, and one of them is access to finance, because that's the one of the biggest needs that they have, and we definitely put our hands dirty and work with the pitch deck and so on. We have, for example, Rivas here today that were pitching yesterday and did a great job, but then also leveraging InnoEnergy's ecosystem and our network to support them. Both finding customers, not just in Europe, but also sometimes globally. I mentioned access to finance, access to talent through the students and the programs that we're running. So there are many different aspects that and needs that they have in order to succeed.
And that you can support them with.
Yes.
What about the Volvos? How do you support, or how do we support investors and startups to make sure that, fail fast, learn, do it again, and give results?
Well, I would say, Ann-Sofie, that the tech fund and the venture capital and the different companies that we have in the big corporation group is one area. But then we work very closely with the different universities, with students, with talents, and with different kind of startups in different kind of partnerships, both on the technology side, as we were into before, but also on the business modeling. So I would say that the initiatives, it doesn't lack initiatives, but maybe we need, as you said before, to be a little bit more vocal about what we are doing, which unfortunately we don't have time to go into now, but just leaving over to Jonas.
And I agree. I think the different sort of corporate tech funds is one key step of doing it. I think transparency is another. Well, we need to, just have faith in that we need to be transparent in a different way than what we have done. We need to share data with others. We need to talk more, but also just sort of let someone else look at what we're doing and hopefully come up with something. Previously, we've treated that rather differently when it comes to IP, but I think if we continue to do it exactly like that, then we know we will fail. So that is probably one thing we should become better at.
Good. So we are trying to round off this session a little bit, and if we try to summarize, the audience here, I want them to leave this panel with actions. Okay, so what is your 1-minute summary for the audience? What do they take with them from the discussion that we have today? I know it's a big and broad question, but something that sticks. Jonas, start, please.
Yeah, I can start. I think I open up with, please don't talk too much about sort of super autonomous future. I think that's too far away. We are stressed and we need help with what's in the period of 5 to 10 years, because that is a very urgent need of companies like us. And from what I see, we are among the leaders in the car making industry, so therefore others should likely have a bigger problem than we have, but still sort of we need that help. So, and secondly, I think right now we're talking climate, and of course that is a really key thing, but biodiversity. Sort of, I'm not sure how many times that word have been mentioned during these 2 days, but in the end of the day, that will be the next horizon for us. A few weeks back, we launched a new strategy setting out our ambitions for biodiversity. If we compare them, perhaps we are 5 years back, we are with biodiversity, we are more or less 5 years back when we were at climate. So this will become a very big sort of an important opportunity and challenge for companies like us. So please help us with that.
Good, thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that we talk about a lot, but I feel like, especially with my generation, we lack the sense of urgency. And something I think about when I see the news is that this is not like a climate crisis. You know, the planet will live and it will rebound, but it's a human crisis. So we all need to get together, and I think going back to yourself and thinking about no matter what role you have in this ecosystem and your purpose, what can you do? Can you be a little bit more open to collaboration and open to new innovation? And I think sometimes, you know, ideas might sound crazy, but they have to.
And we love crazy ideas, right?
The best ideas,
yes.
right? So, I mean, speaking to all the investors in the audience, that you need to dare to take these bold bets in order to solve this. So that will be my key takeaway, not to be scared to take a leap.
Cool. Kristina?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of uncertainties, that's sure. Climate change is not one of them. We are far behind where we need to be. And at least from a personal point of view, I have been creating part of this crisis. Being here together with you, I think having that possibility to actually make a difference together, being just a little bit of a small part. So I would like to build on that, because we can all do more, most probably, than we are doing from a corporate perspective, but also each individual in the system can do more. So if one takeaway at all is that let's be specific, let's focus on what we can do, and join forces into that to make sure that we make the electrification accelerate, but also that we make circularity the new normal. It cannot be a choice not to be circular. It cannot be a choice not to do it a sustainable way. And that goes for all levels.
Right, and to do circular, you need to develop it in a circular way from the very beginning. So it's also a mindset and competence change again, right?
It is.
Fantastic. Before we close, I hope that you have seen our beautiful car over there. It's the smallest car that we have, Jonas. Is it also the most sustainable car so far?
Yes. And it's
so have a
not
look.
even far from good enough if we are to meet our climate targets. So we need to go very much more than that.
But there are some interesting technology in it, and we have product managers over here that can talk about it. So please have a look. With that, my friends, thank you so much for joining, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I've learned from all the different companies, so thank you. Also in the audience, please take action, prioritize, do it day by day, don't wait, right? That's the summary.
Well summarized.
Good.